Welcome everybody to another episode of Lead with Purpose. I'm today I'm with a really special guy, someone who's had an incredible influence on my life. We're here at Columbia Business School live with the legend, Bill Klepper. I would not be here without Bill. That's a fact. Bill, years ago when I was at Sony and I was young and I knew everything. Those were the good old days, weren't they?
Yeah, they were.
I miss those days.
Yeah, I do too.
Really miss those days. We hired Columbia Exec Ed to do a custom program with mobile. And I met this guy, Bill, and one day I was talking to Bill and I said, I really have this major imposter's syndrome going because I don't have much of a formal business education. And he said, well, let's talk about that. Like, what do you really need to get done? And I said, I have no idea. I just need validation. It's probably a personal thing. And Bill introduced me to Dina Consolini, who, by the way, I talked to a couple of days ago.
Yeah.
She's up at Yale. I told her it's okay. She doesn't have to be in New York. She shouldn't feel insecure about it.
Well, Yale's a 4-letter word, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Dina says hi. I told her.
Good.
Another one of my favorite people. And that's how I ended up in the Columbia London Business School EMBA program.
Our global program.
Because of Bill. And we're here because Bill's celebrating his career. We're talking to him about what's next in life, but he's one of the world's leading experts on leadership. Because we talk about leadership in my little podcast, I wanted to kind of take a little journey with you.
Yeah, please.
The history of leadership. I think we do have to talk about your book. I don't have a signed copy of this one. I think I probably have a signed copy of the first one, but you just revised the CEO's Boss, which is I think a great book on leadership. It was. When the first edition came out? First
was 2000, and then we came out with this one 9 years later, 2009. So it's I should have a third edition by now. But
you definitely need to sign one of these for me at some point. Get it. So. Just to back up a little bit, how many years at Columbia?
Well, I started with my first teaching assignment in 1986. They sent me to Beijing, China, and I taught for a term there, spring term. Best experience of my life. I had been collaborating with some faculty and teachers. We had done some research and writing together. Turned out that the woman, Martha Stott, who was a teacher, was married to a guy by the name of Al Oxenfeld, who was faculty at Columbia. And he said, why don't we bring him in to teach? It was leadership. With this program we developed, is the first MBA program in China. And so there was a guy by the name of N.T. Wang, who's known for us from the School of International Programs here. And he brokered this thing. So 1986, spring. And then I taught in the MBA program as an adjunct for 10 years. In 1996, you asleep yet? In 1996, I got a call from this guy, Willie Peterson, who was just given the job to head up Exec Ed. And the dean had a guy by the name of Meyer Fehlberg, had said, look, this guy's been teaching around for 10 years and he knows the faculty. You don't know the faculty. You run the administrative part. Let him work with the faculty. By the way, the faculty at that time, Rita McGrath, one of our first young faculty that we brought over the Exec Ed faculty group. Yeah, she was, yes. And as you probably remember, Bob was part of that, Bob Bontempo and others. Anyway, make a long story short, I came up for a year. I said, I'll give it a try. I took a sabbatical from the College of New Jersey, where I was a vice president. I was teaching there. I had my own department, academic department of human relations that I was chair of. Came up here for a year. That was 30 years ago. So once you fall in love with Columbia Blue, you kind of stick with it. So I've loved it.
I'm wearing both Columbia and Villanova.
I see the V. Yeah, the Knicks. Yeah.
And the Nova Knicks. So 40 years at Columbia. You've seen every form of leadership. You've seen every New York CEO, every national CEO. What's changed in leadership?
Wow. Well, first of all, I think that what has changed in many ways has been what has changed in our societal perspective. Now, these things have a tendency to be cyclical. So I'm going to just say what I observed happen. That is, it used to be when I came to Columbia, there were only 2 women that were in CEO positions. First one was Catherine Graham, excuse me. And she was over the Washington Post. Yep. That was the one. Another one was a husband and wife team, and they shifted back and forth. That was it across all the CEO positions. And so then I saw it evolve. And we were starting to see the evolution at Columbia because more and more of our classes, you know this from the executive MBA program, had a large number, getting close to half of women. And then if you go back to the history of the business school, in the first class over 100 years ago, a third of the women were in that class. So Columbia kind of rediscovered. Anyway, where I'm going is the big change I've seen, and I subscribe to heavily, is that having a diverse cohort of leadership on the national and international level has become more and more evident to me. And I think, I subscribe to it, that diversity is a strength that enriches our businesses, enriches our society, and in many ways our lives as a whole.
Have you seen one of the things that we talk about a lot is how leaders think, and how, you mentioned society and how society has changed things, the ethics of leadership. And I'm thinking about what's happening in the world today in terms of technology. We'll get to technology a little bit,
yeah.
But how leaders process.
Good point.
So I'm thinking about, whether it's some of these, I refer to them as tech bros because I don't like the same rooms out there. These tech bros and how they're changing the world. Rita and I are actually looking at a chart today, celebrating the New York Knicks.
Yeah.
The Knicks. And the U.S. economy, GDP, was 1.4 trillion when the Knicks won their last championship.
Look at that.
It's 33 trillion now. And how much of that was driven by financial engineering and a $38 trillion, I think it's a $39 trillion debt now, and how leadership the ethics of leadership has evolved. I mean, how do you think about that?
Well, ironically enough, the first chapter of my book is titled The Social Contract. Okay. Which, when you peel that down and read about it, it's a statement of ethics. All right. And what do we mean by ethics, right? Well, ethics is, I should warn you all, I'm Jesuit trained, right? So you're going to hear a little bit of,
we'll try to stay
with that. It's what ought to be. And I don't think we, as often as we need, ask that question of what ought to be, not just for the business, right? But what the business serves in society as a whole. And that's the question I don't see being answered. What I know is being asked is, how can we be successful?
Yeah.
Right? How can we beat the competition? How can we, for lack of a better term, be as profitable as possible? Right? But I say, look, before you go there, I understand that that's all important things to address when you're trying to be viable. But what my hope is that you step back from that and ask yourself, what is your social contract as a company, as an organization, to the greater society, right? And in that, by the way, people will say, well, what do you mean with social contract? Well, Rousseau wrote the book, The Social Contract. But it really means is my commitment to the collective versus my own individual needs. I don't see CEOs, in many ways, they're being rewarded not to think that way. They're being thought, let's say, how can we get return, right? We be the shareholders, we be the board members, or you personally. And it doesn't resonate with, well, what about society as a whole? So more and more, from an ethical point of view, I don't think we ask the question, what ought to be, but it's not ought to be for just me. It's ought to be for society as a whole, because our businesses are part of the collective. Our educational institutions are part of the collective. Our faith centers are part of the collective, right? All of that as a whole makes for what we call society. And I don't see that kind of dialogue as much as it should. So when I get with boards and their CEOs, I say, look, I know you got a strategy. I think that's wonderful, right? But let's back off for a minute. What I first want to know is, what do you stand for as an organization? Tell me what your core values are and how they relate to this idea of the greater good as opposed to your individual um, success, I guess.
Yeah, the why gets lost in the measure of success, which is largely, did my stock price go up?
There you go.
You know, what are my options?
Yeah.
What do my options look like? And we're seeing that uh, today in almost everywhere we look. I just kind of wonder what's the business school's responsibility there. I mean, I think
Yeah.
Columbia, and I was here, so which was more than a couple of decades ago now. We asked one of the students in our class, Lauren, had this. She had this great business title. She was really excited. She had just gotten a job as vice president of ethics at Enron.
Look at that.
And another
And what happened to them, right?
another person in our class, Eric, was a partner at a firm called Arthur Anderson. And neither one of them had anything to do with the Enron collapse. I mean, I think Lauren had been there 3 months.
Sure.
And Enron collapsed, and it said VP, ethics and environment or something like that. And Eric was in Europe, so he certainly wasn't doing anything about Enron. And they both lost their jobs.
Sure.
And I think Lauren took quite a while to get back on her feet. And so we said because we were the first LBS Columbia class,
Right.
they treated us pretty well. I don't think subsequent class, I think they learned their lesson. They didn't do that with following classes. But they said, what do you want to learn about? And we said, we want a class on ethics. And the response was, we don't have one at the business school. We think ethics is just obey the law. And it's like, that was the whole answer. And I think that's changed a little bit, but how's the school evolved over the last several decades?
Well, yeah. What I find is leadership has become more and more surfaced as an important area for study and for, I guess you might say, teaching, as finance, as marketing, etc. But I think more and more businesses are realizing that their longevity is tied to this greater question of their core beliefs and what I call social contract. In the short term, I think we're all kind of focused in on financial returns, right? Market share, et cetera, et cetera. But over time, if you want to survive, you've got to, in the competitive landscape, as you come to a realization that it's the added value. So why is it that the Enrons, right, the Andersons failed? And we do case studies in this. Anyways, is because they were chasing the numbers. And they didn't stop enough to say, is that really what it's all about? Or should we stand for more than that? The irony of it was, when you look at Anderson particularly, it's some very, very good people in that organization. In fact, the other remaining firms sucked them right up. Deloitte had a lot of Anderson people and used the Anderson people in many ways as stimulus for them, I think, living more the values. So they said, don't get caught up in this. State your values and live them. So,
yeah. So I've heard you say that when you were a young man, the leadership heroes that you saw were MLK and JFK.
Yeah, right.
Who are they today?
Oh, that's a good question.
Who do you look at today?
Yeah. Well, first of all, now we'll get into kind of a political perspective.
Let's do it.
Let's do it?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm looking forward to going
for clicks, though. Do it.
Okay. Well, I'm looking forward to going to Chicago. Why am I looking forward to going to Chicago? Because they're opening up the Obama, right, Center. And so I say, look, you can do some compare and contrast right now if you want. You can look at what I consider to be what Obama, as an organizer, community organizer, what he brought in terms of a value set to society. Did he make mistakes? We all do, right? Did he achieve everything he wanted to? I doubt he would admit to that. But what he did leave you with was a sense of what I consider to be goodwill. In other words, there was a general feeling of goodwill. That's why they gave him 2 terms, right? I always stand back and say to myself, has the landscape changed, right? Are we now talking about people, and we've said this a lot, are they just doing good, and well, and are they separated as opposed to good, well? Now, what I mean by that, I think more and more people are back to, how can I make money off this gig, right? All we got to do is look at the current, what I would call critique of our leadership. And I think most people feel disconnected because they feel I'm no longer in your sphere of I guess you might say, goodwill. It appears like your first goodwill is addressed to yourself and how you benefit. So I think, I can put some labels on it. And that is, are we moving away from a social democracy and more towards an autocracy? And I think there's definitely the shift in that direction. Now, go ahead.
Yeah, I think you've seen that in the corporate world as
Yes,
well, where
yes.
CEOs are exercising more and more power, being more kind of authoritarian on one end of the spectrum, and another end of the spectrum, you've got CEOs that, one of my favorite CEOs just retired, Doug McMillan from Walmart,
Yeah.
and you've probably run into Doug at some point or another, I'm sure, but I used to tell everybody I worked with, everybody I coached, is if you want to see what kind of good looks like, follow him on LinkedIn, because all the videos are him in a store, and him
Yeah.
at a warehouse, or him with a trucker. You only see him in his office once a quarter when he's leaning against the desk and talking about how those people
Right.
in the front lines got it done. But that's the exception, right? I mean, you
Sure.
look at the financial markets and private equity, and
Yeah. Well,
we can't say too much about private equity sitting in its building, but you know what I mean.
yeah, KKR's kind of in there.
Yeah.
Well, are you ready? You have to cut it, but here it comes.
We can go.
I've been queried for the last couple of years about a guy named Elon Musk. You know about him?
I've heard the guy.
Yeah. And Elon Musk, as you know, has just been touted as the first trillionaire.
Mm-hmm.
The history of business, okay? And we had this discussion on the side, so I'll just repeat it. I would have been queried all along when he was dealing with his Tesla and board issue, and the court shut him down in terms of ownership, and the way he got fined, millions of dollars from SEC, basically.
It's like a cup of coffee, though. So.
That's right. But anyway, the point of the matter is this, and this is where I come into it, is Elon Musk, as successful as he is, are you holding him up, Bill, as a great leader? And the answer is no, I'm not. Is he financially successful? Yeah, I think so. Now, the people would say, well, you got to give him something, don't you? They said, this is what I've said. I think we have different kinds of leaders in organizations. And in the case of Elon Musk, and we can talk about others, and by the way, this goes all the way back to the Good to Great, publications. The difference for me is, can they be successful financially as well as ethically? All right. Now, people say, well, why are you canceling out Musk? Well, he's already been, unethical in a number of ways, but that's not the issue. The Musk issue is he's probably one of the creative minds in the world. One of the most innovative individuals you ever want.
Without a doubt.
No doubt. And so my comments in the press, so it's not like anything new, he is probably the chief innovation officer that every organization wants. But don't make him your chief executive leader. He's not that. And I always say to people, you probably want to make money off Musk, but you don't want to work for Musk.
Yeah. Own the stock, but don't.
That's right.
Right.
That's right. He's, because of his innovation. Now, a lot of people work with Musk because they're getting that return anyway. and he allows for the innovation, et cetera. And I think you got to give it to him. But in many ways, he's a bad leadership model. And a lot of it is because, I hate to blow it this way, is the man lacks the basic ingredient to great leadership, in my opinion, and that is emotional as well as uh, social intelligence.
I think we saw that. So I think he's one of many examples. I want to come back to AI and jobs in just a second, but we saw that also in the financial explosion in the
Yeah,
late 90s into the 2000s leading up to 2008. We saw those same people, right? They
we
made
did.
movies about those people, right? And that that scene in the movie where the guy's like, he has edge, like, and he's screaming at people like, "You don't know the numbers," and I know. That's not edge. That's being an asshole, right?
I'm glad you
Yeah.
said that. Yes. Yeah.
Edge is truth with compassion.
There you go.
Edge
There you
is
go.
I tell you something because I care about you,
That's right.
right? But so we went through that in the financial world. I think we're kind of in the tech world now, right? So
Yep.
we're looking at Anthropic on one side.
Yep.
They claim to be the good guys, and look at what happened with them in the last week or so, and some of the stuff they did with Mythos and the back end of that model, holding people's data for 30 days. Now, they just pulled it today, by the way.
Oh, did they?
Yeah. So I think it's finally fully pulled. Because the government had put their put some restrictions on them that they claimed they couldn't meet. So you got that thing happening where they claim to be the good guys, but yet they're trying to carve out a space that looks like it's going to block open source models. That's kind of really fascinating to me. And then, don't even get me started on OpenAI and what's happening there. It seems like the same wave. It's just AI, and it's just not big banking and
Yeah. Yeah.
leverage buyouts.
Sure. I mean, when you drill it
Is it
down
the
to,
same people reaching for a different pot of gold?
well, yeah, I think so. I think in most instances, I can see the inauguration of the second term in the back, what we call bench
Yeah.
of billionaires, right? You think they're there because they love the guy who got elected? No,
Seems unlikely.
seems unlikely.
Right.
It seems to me like there's a quid pro quo here. There's a you make me wealthy and I'll make you a success, right? What do you need? You got it, right? We'll be happy to do this, that, and whatever. But here's where I strip it down. In most cases, when people, and I'll start end where I started. When most people no longer address the issue of a social contract, something greater than self, right? The common will, right? Then there's a tendency to, for the most part, lack of a better term, I'd call degenerate down to my own personal interest. And in business, if you want to distill it down to basics, it's how can I make as much money as I possibly can? Right?
I think it's fascinating. So OpenAI starts as this organization that's going to save the world.
Yeah. It was open,
From
free.
AI, and it's by definition open. Like, you're going to get all this stuff, and
Right.
you're going to be safe. And now it's suddenly for profit with a $1 trillion valuation,
Right.
right? And then some folks spin out of OpenAI because they're like, I don't believe in all that. And suddenly $1 trillion valuations, and the elbows come out to block open source
Yeah.
models. It's just fascinating to watch.
Wouldn't you have called that a lost leader when you were selling?
Feels like an expense.
Tell them like it's free.
Yeah.
And then when they get dependent on it,
About a $300 billion loss.
That's the
I
one.
got a $1 trillion valuation.
There you
That
go.
worked out pretty well.
Yeah, pretty well.
So, on the AI front, these same tech bros have been talking about, we're going to take all your jobs, all of them, every job. Your buddy Elon said there'll be no jobs, and then there's going to be this universal high, which I can't even. Let's not even go down that rat hole. But now, as they're getting closer to their IPOs, the press is, maybe it's not going to take all the jobs now. Maybe it's all going to be good. But I do think you've seen a lot of these waves, right? You saw the the financial wave.
How about the .com?
And you saw the .com bust,
right?
Followed by the financial bust,
right?
And we're probably coming up on some version of an AI bust.
I think we will.
But this tool is really different, and it really is. I mean, I I'm a fan and fearful of it. I use it every day, and I've used it to leverage my
And
business.
the more you use it, the more we get to know you.
Yeah, and there's a lot of power there, and I think you're seeing companies leverage. What are your thoughts there?
Sure.
What's going to happen to the organization of the future with this kind of?
Well, it's interesting. Now, I don't know if you're aware of the Institute for the Future group out in Palo Alto, California. By the way, their standard pitch 50 years out. They basically write future states for 50 years out. And there's a close friend, Rita, I'm sure you worked with Bob Johansson, right? And he's got a book out on AI and leadership, which is really good. I recommend it. Take a look at it. And here's where he comes down. He says, I don't have all the answers for you, but as a futurist, let me just tell you, here's where you want to end up. Pretty good, huh?
Yeah.
Here's where you want to end up. And that is, we still have, you're a knowledge worker, aren't you not? You're a knowledge worker. I mean,
I'm faking it, but yeah.
yeah.
Let's go there.
So we're knowledge workers, okay? So the point is that we have a capacity to think. Fair enough? Right? That's why we're knowledge workers. AI doesn't replace thinking. What it does is it augments your thinking. It's like anything else. When Rita and I, she's younger than I am, but when Rita and I were doing our doctoral dissertation work, right, we would be in the stacks of the library. Remember those days, Rita? In the stacks of the library, days on end, right? Collecting original works, studying it, putting it together, as I said, in many ways, secondary research of our own. AI does it like that in seconds for you. Never have to go in the stacks again. That's a tremendous augmentation. But it's not what they're telling you. They're simply reporting to you, but relative to what you're thinking. So now what we got to do is use it to augment. That's where he's going. Now he takes you down 8 steps. I don't want to get into all of them, of what you need to do to best augment the AI thing. But right now, I think it's a little bit to the point where, like any other significant technological innovation, we're the deer in the headlights. Like, what am I going to do? You remember the time when we first got laptops?
Yeah.
Remember that? You were totally dependent on the central computer system. And remember the most powerful.
My life because I can't spell.
Yeah, yeah.
I'd be a ditch digger.
There it is. Yeah, I was a ditch digger. It's actually kind of fun, really, with digging ditches. But the answer is that we were totally dependent on the what I would call computer geek. Remember him?
Yep.
Central computing. And they'd like to play their power and say, you just don't know what you're doing. Get out of the way. I'll do it. Right. I'm afraid we're approaching AI that way now. We don't know exactly what to do with it. We're giving them the same kind of power as we were giving our computer officers when we first got computers.
Yeah, and I think it may be a little bit worse, and I'm a little too far down this route, later, but with the way these frontier models are working and how they're allocating resources and thinking about who can use the best model. And you just saw last week with Anthropic. It's like, no,
Yeah.
you're allowed to use this model and you're not allowed.
Right.
And here's the question you can ask, and you can't ask this question. There's only about, by the way, about 36 hours of this before it all got shut off. But it's pretty terrifying stuff when you think about the power of these models, and then there's going to be one person that says, "Oh no, like you can't ask that question about
Right.
biology." And with this model, you have to use the dumb model. So we get to pick who can ask the smart question.
Right. And knowledge is power.
Knowledge is power. Is absolute.
Right. And if we restrict our knowledge source, some people are going to be more powerful than others. There it is.
Thank you for everything.
Thank you.
Last question.
Yeah.
When they still say Bill Klepper, what do you want people to think?
Oh, well.
It's a family program.
No, I did, and I've tried to think about myself and people I've interacted and whatever. It was a fun ride. That's what I'd love for people to say. It was a fun ride. So, Ron, this has been a fun ride.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
God bless you, and thank you for everything you've done for me.
Thank you, buddy. All right.
That was fun. That was fun.
It was a fun ride.
Roller coaster.